Hey guys, it's Candace.
And it's Elena.
And you're listening to Cousins on Crime. Happy New Year.
Yeah, jingle, jingle.
Whoa Nelly. 2025?
25.
No, that can't be right.
We're in the future, y'all. We are
That
living
can't
in the
be
future.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. 2025?
I know.
I don't know. I don't want to go too deep, but I'm questioning everything right now.
What is time?
What is time and why?
Why?
Where is it?
And when?
And what does it do? I hope everybody had a great holiday and
yeah.
My year was tough last year.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just move on from that.
We will. And we're going to make new things.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just all have a fresh start.
Yeah.
If you feel like you had a rough year, let's turn the page.
Mm-hmm. I know we've talked about resolutions before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you making any? Like I've said before, I don't really make resolutions. I just try to be better.
Yeah, I mean, I always am like, I'll do better tomorrow.
Tomorrow's a new day.
I know. That's what I tell myself when I'm like, yikes, you kind of lost it today. We'll do better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Resolutions, no.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't have anything that I want to do in this new year. Get LASIK. Okay.
Oh.
I do want to get LASIK this year.
That's adulting.
That is more adultish than a resolution. Yeah. So
okay.
Anything you want to do this year that's not necessarily a resolution, but you
not work as much and travel.
Okay.
I mean,
that trip to Europe really tickled your fancy?
I would say not out of the country.
Okay.
I like a good road trip.
Yeah. Well, y'all haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
So,
maybe
and you didn't have Chris with you, so
I know that made me really sad.
That kind of crapped on it a little bit.
Yeah.
So, well, speaking of crapping on your time, this one's gonna do it for you. It's just a really terrible story. So let's just get into it.
All right.
November 14th, 1965 was a cold day in Mansfield, Ohio. Now, as the sun set, the safe community wrapped up their day, eating dinner together with their families and settling in for the night. Mary Ellen Deener was happy, giggly. She was a young girl who just loved playing hopscotch and doing all the things that little girls do, twirling their hair, and she was just a typical teenager. She had 6 siblings, and they all had things to do around the house.
Oh, okay.
This reminds me of you, Lane and Tish, growing up. And we could not play Barbies until the dishes were washed.
You're right.
Or whatever you had to do. So I would jump in and help. Mary Ellen, she was 14, and her sister Brenda, who was 12, began washing the clothes that evening. But about midway through, the washer broke. And this has literally happened to me before. And you're like, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
So they bagged up these sopping wet clothes and took a taxi down to the local laundromat.
Oh my goodness.
To finish this laundry and then dry the clothes. Now, it was after dark, but half-hour laundromat was just down the street. It was down the street and around the corner. And their grandmother lived right next door to the laundromat. So,
convenient.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
The girls made it safely to the laundromat and began sorting through the mess that lay before them. Water just was puddling all over the floor as they were retrieving the soaking wet clothes from each bag to transfer them into these washer machines. They started a load and began to load up another washer with clothes when Mary Ellen realized they didn't have enough money, enough change for the next load. She was like, look, I'm going to run down to the other laundromat because there was one around the other corner.
Oh.
And I'll post a little diagram. And so she was like, I'll go get change. I guess this laundromat they were at didn't have a change machine and the other one did.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can think of, but I didn't see an explanation for that. But she's like, I'm going to run around the corner, get change, and then I'll be right back. So she walked out the door, leaving Brenda to look after their clothes and wait for her return.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after some time, when Mary Ellen didn't come back, Brenda went next door to their grandmother's house and said, I'm looking for Mary Ellen. I'm wondering, did she come by here at any point? Like, she's been gone quite a while. And her grandmother was like, no, I haven't seen her, but
oh no,
you wait here and I'm going to go look for her.
Oh
like,
no,
that ain't right. So when the grandmother rounds the corner to head towards the laundromat that Mary Ellen was headed to, she saw police cars.
Oh no.
And flashing lights blocking the end of the road.
No.
She immediately worried that they were there because something happened to her granddaughter.
Yeah.
And as she ran to the flashing red and blue lights, there was Mary Ellen laying on the sidewalk.
No.
With coins strewn all around her body and blood pooling beneath her head.
Oh.
She was able to identify Mary Ellen for the police, and the police learned this must have just happened.
Yeah.
And she told her, she was at the laundromat. She was just there with her sister. And so that just kind of snowballed into
how fast the events happened.
That's really amazing. Did. It was just like in the blink of an eye, something happened. Like, how does this happen? And I've got to give it to them. The police were all over it. I imagine these officers had just put their own teenagers to bed, tucking them in at night.
Right.
And now they're called to this child laying on the pavement, murdered alone in the dark.
No.
But in about 24 hours, they had someone in custody.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They weren't playing. Now, they retrieved a bullet from Mary Ellen's body and determined that it was shot from a .38 caliber weapon. So they started searching gun stores around the area to see if they could find maybe a recent purchase for such a weapon. And it didn't take long for them to find a recent .38 purchase from a Lester Eubanks.
Okay.
He was young, just 22 at the time, and he had been arrested for attempted rape.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. So they ran his name and they thought, let's go get him. Let's go get him. He was actually out on bond at the time.
Dumb.
Like, we could go off on this right now.
Yeah.
Like, he should have not been out.
We've said it so many times.
I mean, beating my head up against a wall. Mary Ellen's sister Myrtle, isn't that such a cute name?
I do like that name.
Myrtle. She remembered seeing this guy. Like, she didn't know him personally, but she remembered who he was. Okay. And like, she would see him walk around the town. He had these nunchucks that he would flap around, and he was always dressed really nice and seemed fairly harmless.
Okay. Harmless with nunchucks.
I know. Like, he had nunchucks, but he wasn't like, it
was just something to fidget
with.
It was just
I'm thinking of my brother. Like, my brother had nunchucks. Like, Lane and Kyle used to flap around their nunchucks, and they were just boys,
Yeah.
Okay, maybe 22 is a little old to be walking around town with nunchucks, but people didn't think anything of it. But they'd soon come to realize that he was a monster. Police brought Lester in for questioning, and without much pressing, Lester confessed to killing Mary Ellen.
Okay.
Yeah, he folded like a house of cards. He said he saw Mary Ellen a bit earlier in that time frame, in the laundromat, and he thought she was pretty. And then he's on this other street and he sees her walking. He's like, dang, it's my lucky day. So she was walking towards him, really going to that other laundromat. And because he's vile and disgusting and a sexual predator, he saw an opportunity and he didn't even think twice about it.
Mm-mm.
As she walked past him, he reached out and he grabbed her and she shouted, "What are you doing?" And he snatched her off the sidewalk and drug her back behind this vacant house that was nearby. Mary Ellen was screaming and she was flailing and she was like, "Let me go." And he tried to keep her quiet by putting his hand over her mouth. And then he tried removing her clothes so he could rape her, but she wasn't allowing it. I mean, she was fighting him so hard he could not subdue her.
You go, girl.
So he just pulled out a gun and shot her twice in the torso. Because he's a little...
Coward?
Yeah, coward.
I mean, there's so many words we could say.
That's a much nicer way to put it. I was going to say something else, but this is a family show and the kids are listening. Yeah, so he hightailed it out of there. He shot her twice and ran away. He went back to his apartment. He cleaned up. He got dressed to go out. And when you get to know this guy better in this story, it wasn't like he was like, "Oh my God, I've got to go do something, like create an alibi so that nobody knows." No. He could have cared less.
No guilty conscience.
No, he didn't care what he just did. He wanted to go dancing.
Oh, well.
He was like, "Now that that's done, I'm going to go out." So he gets ready and makes plans to meet up with friends. And about 45 minutes later, he had to walk back by where he just did this to Mary Ellen. Well, now she was on the sidewalk, writhing in pain. She was still alive.
Still alive.
Yes. She was calling out for help. She was moaning in agony.
No.
Still clutching laundry coins in her hand.
I'm sorry.
He was startled to see that. He didn't expect her. He didn't expect to see her at all when he walked back by. Because remember, he drug her back behind a house. So she made her way to go find help. And so
I just wonder if he didn't see her there on the sidewalk, if he would have gone back to where he left her just to see if she was still there. Or would he...
Maybe.
Because they do go back to the scene of the crime.
They do. But she must have seen him approaching her.
Oh, no.
And I can't imagine what went through her head.
The fear. Oh, Lord.
I mean, she was probably thinking, did he come back to help me? Did he realize what he'd done?
No.
But he didn't come back to help her. He stood over her with a brick that he'd retrieved from the nearby alleyway and brought it down on her head a couple times until she stopped moving.
Stop it.
Yeah. He crushed her skull. And Lester told police that he had to go back to his apartment again and change his pants. Because he had those plans with his friends. And now he's gone and dirtied them again. So he went, changed his pants, put on a jacket, and went over to his friend Bobby's apartment. By the following year, Lester found himself sitting in a cold chair in Richland County Courthouse at his murder trial. Mary Ellen's family showed up every day to let him know that they loved her and missed her.
Yeah.
And they were going to watch him go down to Chinatown.
Yeah, you bet.
Lester took the stand to testify in his own defense.
Okay,
I don't know.
What are you going to say, bro?
What are you defending? I mean, he was so arrogant and smooth talking.
Ew.
He had just this way with words. And though he admitted to the murder, he showed no shred of remorse whatsoever. Not at any point.
Mm-mm.
Well, the jury was not confused. I mean, oftentimes, you'll get a defendant that goes up there and the jury may, now I'm confused. Nope, they weren't confused about the events of the crime, and they brought back a guilty verdict. The penalty? Death.
Oh, strong-armed.
Her family, friends, and the community just breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that this monster was off the streets forever and he was going to be behind bars and then totally smoked like a Christmas turkey in the gas chamber, and they would never even have to think of him again.
Right.
He would just be poof into oblivion. Well, Lester was remanded to the Ohio State Penitentiary.
One of those.
Penitentiary. I don't know. He was locked up in downtown Columbus, Ohio. He was really salty about being on death row.
Oh, get over yourself.
As you are.
Right.
And he would let everyone know it. Again, he wasn't denying his crime. He just thought, why am I here? Like, why do I deserve to be punished? He didn't think that he deserved to be getting the punishment that he was getting. He was rude to the guards and the inmates alike, and just had a general bad attitude about everything. He didn't like to be confined. He didn't like the people. He didn't like the food. Wah, 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 wah.
Did he get everything he wanted growing up?
I don't know. I didn't dig too much into his upbringing because, like, who freaking cares?
Yeah. True. Okay.
And I wasn't able to find too much about Mary Ellen because we're so focused on this jerk.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Now, after several years in prison, he pretty much stayed to himself. He would paint. He was, I don't want to say talented because I don't want to give him that, but he was very good at painting and drawing. And so he did that in his cell. Back then, death row inmates were given sharp pencils
to
draw with and pointy brushes to paint with.
Sure.
They
Sounds
were
like a good idea.
Yeah, right. I mean, the 60s. They were locked up nearly all day long, so they wanted to give them something to do in there. Like, poor guy, he's awaiting death. I mean, let him paint.
The person you murdered didn't get to do that, but here you go.
She didn't even get to make change and finish her chores.
Right.
Lester's execution date came and went. For whatever reason, it was pushed back. Not just that once, but a total of 3 times. Then came 1972. Lena.
Don't say it. No, let's just end it here.
You know what the Supreme Court did in 1972 with regards to the death penalty? They abolished it. That's right. If you haven't listened to episode 85 and 86 about Kenneth McDuff, that's another loser who got his death sentence tossed. That's another infuriating one. Along with about 50 other death row inmates in Ohio, Lester's sentence was essentially commuted to life in prison. Mary Ellen's family was furious. It was like ripping off a scar. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that must feel like.
Now it's another gaping wound.
Exactly. But, they were like, what can we do? Like, what can we do about it? I'm sure it took them a minute to adjust to this new reality, but they went on to live their lives normal as best they could. And besides, he was behind bars forever. So still, they're never going to have to think about him again. Never going to have to put up with him. So they just thought, this sucks, but let's move on.
Right.
Now, once his sentence was commuted to life, he was put in the general population. And he straightened up.
Really?
Yeah, Lena's face. Lena's like, say what?
Well, there's lots of threats around him now. Like,
I know. So you can't be mouthing off. But he seemed to have this whole new lease on life, which literally.
Yeah.
That toxic attitude that he shoved down everyone's throats when he was facing death sort of vanished and he started schmoozing.
Interesting.
You see, there was an honorary program.
Oh, no. Stop it. Okay, we're ending it right here.
Elena has this electric bug zapper right there, and I think she might throw it at me.
I'm not listening anymore.
I've got to tell you the rest of the story. There was an honorary program which allowed inmates time off site, as in they got to leave the prison. It was meant to reward prisoners for their good behavior and incentivize other prisoners to say, look, this is what happens when you're good.
No.
Good behavior goes a long way. Now, in this program, sometimes they would run errands for the prison, like they would drive a delivery from here to there or do some kind of work. And sometimes they just straight up got to leave.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So Lester wanted in this program.
Yeah.
He was like, I want to leave the prison.
Yeah.
I want to get out of here.
Oh, no.
I deserve to be out in the world.
Okay.
So he buddied up with the guards and, he took, I don't know how long it took him to get accepted into that program, but he was on his best behavior.
Sure.
And he was accepted in the program. He would put his paintings in local art shows that he would attend and show his art. And this, I'm not talking this was a room at the prison where, like the public could come by and look at inmate art. No. This was like legit at a gallery.
Oh my gosh.
Where he would display all of his art and rub shoulders with these people who didn't realize they were buying a painting from the same hands that had murdered a child.
Ew.
I bet he felt invincible.
Oh, absolutely.
Getting to leave. I bet he thought, psh,
what is prison?
What is it? I don't need it. Well, it was December 7th, 1973, and the prison had arranged a shopping trip to Great Southern Shopping Mall for the honorary inmates to buy Christmas presents for their families.
This sounds like a made-up story.
I know. It sounds like a made-up story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
These inmates were dropped off at 10 a.m. by 2 guards.
Oh my gosh.
And the guards were like, we'll be back at 2. Meet us right back here.
Mm-hmm.
What? These plain-clothed convicts walked around the mall unattended with the freedom to go get a pretzel or go get Chick-fil-A at the food court or whatever for 4 hours.
Okay.
So when the guards arrived back at the mall, the inmates were all waiting there. They filed into the van, all of them except for Lester.
Big shocker.
Mm-hmm. Well, it wasn't like they could just call him and go, hey, boy, where you at? Like,
has anybody seen Lester?
No. This was boots to the ground. They're looking for him like your mom looks for you at Kmart when you get lost, They probably made an announcement over the mall saying, Candace Lynette, your mother's waiting for you at the front.
Yeah.
Get your booty up here. She's checked out and ready to go.
And you can't say, have you seen a prisoner wearing an orange jumpsuit?
Can you imagine how PC that announcement could have been?
Wow.
Hello. Lester Eubanks, we're looking for you. Please,
Lester,
meet us back at the rendezvous
Lester, the
point.
child molester.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, that's perfect. That did not even occur to me. Well, they didn't find him. After hours of searching, he wasn't at Penny's. He wasn't picking out some gloves for his mama. No. Despite the guards, the police officers, mall employees, everybody looking high and low, he was in the wind. The police notified Mary Ellen's family promptly.
Oh, Jesus.
First, he's off death row. Now this.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were like, look, if you see him or hear anything, just please call us. And they're like, how does a murderer escape? What do you mean he was at the shopping mall? What do you mean he was shopping when he escaped? What do you mean?
No.
Explain.
Yeah.
I
This
can't
is
imagine
so
the
unbelievable.
confusion, but they frankly were rip-roaring mad.
Well, yeah. Whose head do I need to have? Like, who
Exactly.
do I need to get fired here?
Shortly after his escape, police combed through Lester's visitation log in the weeks leading up to his escape. He had a few visitors a week just before he became a fugitive, whereas before that, he had like 1 or 2 a month, maybe.
Okay.
So they tracked down his family and friends, particularly those who were visitors on the list, and no one would reveal anything to authorities about his whereabouts. And police got the impression that they knew good and well where he went.
Mm-hmm.
Authorities put out a federal warrant for his arrest so that no matter what state he found himself in, and no matter what trouble he found himself in, because no doubt he was that guy,
Yeah.
he'd be flagged in the system as a wanted man. But for 20 years,
Shut your mouth.
he evaded police.
Shut your mouth.
By December of 1993, a detective was like, I wonder whatever happened to that Lester guy who escaped. And he was like,
Wow.
I wonder if he was ever like arrested and we didn't get notified. I guess that happens. Maybe it just kind of slipped through and maybe he's in prison for something else, something unrelated. So he did this quick database search and no, Lester had not been arrested. But that's not what made his stomach fall through his butt.
Mm-hmm.
There were no warrants listed
Shut.
for Lester Maybank
Stop talking.
in the database. That federal warrant that they typed up on letterhead and filed, it wasn't there. It had been deleted somehow. So if he had ever been pulled over for a traffic violation or got a parking ticket or anything of that nature, they would have run his name and there would have been no flags. Likely he wasn't using that name, but
this man used to be on death row.
Seriously. This is Kenneth McDuff all over again.
Oh my God.
The other thing that was clear was that with no warrants, there was nothing actively being done to find the monster in 20 years.
Are you going to tell me how this got erased?
No, because they just think it was an unfortunate clerical error. Like, that sucks. What are we going to do about it?
What an injustice for this family.
So no one was looking for him for 20 years. It was like everyone had just moved on and forgotten about it. But they put his photo on America's Most Wanted in 1994, and they got a call that night from a woman who said she knew him from her California days.
Okay.
And she told police that he lived with his cousin's widow, Kay Banks, at the time that she knew him. Kay Banks was married to Daryl Banks, who was Lester's cousin. And he was actually a well-known singer in the Detroit area in the 60s.
Oh.
Random. But after Daryl was shot and killed in Detroit, Kay moved to California to start a new life. And that's when she became pen pals with Lester.
Oh.
The poor cousin that was on death row.
What, she was just lonely or something?
I don't know if she just thought, this is my only connection to Daryl, or I don't know. But they became pen pals. And she established quite a friendship with him through his dark days on death row and then his happier times when he was, when his sentence was commuted and, he was leaving the prison. It's unclear how he had the means, but police believe someone helped him and bought him a ticket to California, where he turned up at Kay's door. The investigators finally catch up with Kay, and she claimed that she didn't know Lester was going to show up at her house, which I think is garbage.
Yeah.
But she took him in, and he began to really establish a life there in the Los Angeles area.
Since you're here, let's just settle in.
You've come all this way.
Yeah.
Come on in. Have
I'll
some
make you a
frosted
bed.
mini wheats. Yeah. So he began using the name Victor Young. he got a hunting license to use as a form of ID. I guess that was an acceptable form of ID back then in the 70s. And he started working here and there.
Mm-hmm.
In their conversation with Kay, they learned more about Lester's escape. The day he hightailed it out of that shopping mall, he fled up to Michigan, where he had family and laid low to stay off the radar. And after weeks passed, and he was like surprised that no one was coming to look for him, he started working. Just like painting houses and whatever else fugitives do for money.
Sure.
Then Lester got on that bus to California and went to Kay's house. Kay recounted for investigators that Lester's bus was stopped by police when it crossed over into California. And Lester told her, like, I just knew they were like, that was it. They were going to get me. But police were not looking for Lester.
No.
A convict. No. They were looking for illegal fruit that was potentially being smuggled.
Well, he's a bad piece of fruit. So can you take him?
Anybody got any avocados in your purse? Let's see it. Nope. He made eye contact with the police officers and he smiled, and they didn't find any fruit on the bus, so they left.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure how Kay Banks laid her head on a pillow at night knowing there was a murder just on the other side of the wall. Maybe she justified it because he was family, but I don't know how she looked herself in the mirror knowing that a 14-year-old child was brutally murdered, taken away from everyone who loved her, and the family she left behind would never be the same. Meanwhile, you're providing shelter and food and whatever else to this monster who's responsible for all that.
Yeah.
Now, over time, though, Kay started to feel really uncomfortable in her own house. This was going to happen.
Okay.
This was always going to happen. Lester was a jerk to her.
Surprise.
He was arrogant. And he wasn't exactly paying rent or contributing to living there in any way, shape, or form. But she couldn't just ask him to leave.
Oh.
Because
he'd get mad.
She knew what he was capable of. So she was like, listen, I got a call from the FBI and they were asking about you. And I just, like, I feel like it's only a matter of time before they show up here.
That's so smart.
It is. And he's like, later. Yeah. And he had his bag packed in a blink of an eye. And he vamoosed.
How about just call the FBI and tell
them
to come pick him up?
That would have been the right thing to do.
Yeah.
While he was still there.
Yeah.
No, she didn't do it. But detectives, you know, they thanked her for speaking with them and they felt like she knew more. And they're like, tell us more.
Okay.
She's like, listen, the last I knew, he was working at some mattress manufacturing plant in Gardena, California. But the police, when they finally made it down there to this plant, Lester had already moved on. It was now 1994, and the manager said that he hadn't been there since like the late 80s.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So investigators continued to search for Lester for a couple of years until they pretty much hit a brick wall. His footprints in the snow were melting, and, you know, they were not able to track him anywhere. Mm-hmm. They had no leads. They had no sightings, nothing, zilch.
Yeah.
In 2003, Lieutenant Michael Vinson was contacted to look into some old escapee cases that had gone cold. With advancements in technology, even in the early aughts, there may be some resources that they could use in capturing these people. Lieutenant Vinson had never heard of Mary Ellen's murder case before.
Mm.
Like, how? How was that not the biggest talk of the town?
I know.
And the guy escaped and was never found? Like, how was that not on everybody's lips at the grocery store? I don't know. But he had never heard about it. And as he's reading through the case file, he just shuddered that this man went to the mall and escaped. He was like, what?
Yeah.
What?
After being on death row. Like if you've been on death row before, you should not have the opportunity to be in these honorary programs.
Like, no. Your sentence is commuted, but you're staying in here, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, the only place to start was his relatives there in Mansfield, Ohio. And the only relative that Lester had there, which was where Lieutenant Vinson was stationed, was Lester's father, Mose. So he went to see him, and he didn't want to talk about Lester. But he said he believes criminals can turn their lives around. And in fact, Mose said that he spent a significant amount of time speaking with inmates in prisons, counseling them, if you will, to provide them hope for their future, which that's great and all. And I'm sure Lieutenant Vinson would have been pleased with that if it weren't for the next thing that he said, which was, nothing's going to bring that girl back.
Okay.
And Lieutenant Vinson questioned Mose and asked him, okay, so do you believe justice was done, though? Yeah, we can't get her back, but was justice served? And Mose said that, his son had changed, and he prayed that he was living a good life somewhere, and he didn't want to say any more about Lester.
I'm sure he didn't.
As detectives wrapped up that conversation, probably sickened, they got the impression that he knew where Lester was.
Yeah.
He knew exactly where he was. He knew exactly what kind of life he was leading. And around the same time, an informant came forward and told police that she was over at Mose in the summer when his phone rang. And he went into the other room to answer it.
Oh, okay.
Now, you youngsters have only ever heard about a home phone or a landline. But, we used to have one in the kitchen, one in the living room. And, it wasn't open concept back then. So these were all different rooms.
Right.
Maybe had one in the bedroom. But when he got up to go answer the phone in the kitchen, and she's like, why didn't he just answer the phone
right next
right
to
here in the living room? She was like, Well, Mose came back into the room and he said, yeah, that was my son who lives in Alabama. He was just taking a break from painting a house.
Okay.
Police knew that he didn't have any siblings in Alabama, and they didn't know of any connections. So they pulled Mose's phone records.
Oh.
To see who's calling him from Alabama.
Okay.
By now
we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. This is gumshoe kind of stuff. They found an Alabama number that came through frequently. Now, we're talking about the early aughts and pulling phone records. These things take time. So it's probably months that they've been at this.
Okay.
So they found an Alabama number that had come through frequently, and it was the number for a Centered for Troubled Youth. When they finally made that connection,
Okay.
the employee that had been making those calls had already moved on. They believed that employee was Lester. And that's the last time Lester slipped through their fingers.
Troubled youth? He was
like working as a janitor or something at this place.
Ooh, no.
Law enforcement remains absolutely sick that Lester was able to go free and that he's been bouncing around making a living all these years, having whatever kind of life, or worse, committing other crimes and getting away with them.
That's what I'm sitting here thinking, like, all these years, he's out there doing stuff.
Eating Chick-fil-A.
Well, worse than that.
They did their job, though. Like, they caught him, indicted him, took him to trial, got that conviction, and then they passed the torch to the prison system.
And they let him go.
And they totally crapped the bed. Who allowed him to join this honorary program? Whose genius idea was it to drop them off at a mall? What? What?
I can't.
I want names.
Yeah.
Are you listening? Do you feel good? Do you feel good about this? What
are you doing with your life now?
I can't even. Investigators in Ohio have attended a few funerals for Lester's family members over the years, hoping to find him there. One in Texas, one in Florida. Maybe he was still in contact with his family and would show up at any of these funerals to either pay his respects or reconnect, but he didn't. Or if he did, they didn't catch him. In 2018, Lester Maybank's ugly mug was slapped on the U.S. Marshals 15 Most Wanted list. And in 2020, Unsolved Mysteries released an episode about him, which generated more tips. But he's still never been captured. I think Mary Ellen Deener gets so lost in this story because it becomes about this guy.
Yeah.
And his story. And the shocking fact that he has evaded justice for 51 years now. Mary Ellen didn't get to finish her chores. She didn't get to have a first love. She didn't get to finish school. All because someone couldn't control themselves.
Yeah.
Hey, Lester. Your time is running out. Your arrogance will be your downfall.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of familial DNA? Google it.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming for you.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time.
And if you're related to Lester and you're listening and you know where he is, how can you carry on with this? And just is it because it's just been so long and he's old now and a child lost her life and he should have to spend the rest of his, even if that's a week.
Right.
Behind bars.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he's got cancer and he's going to die anyways, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Come forward and do the right thing. If you know him, I'm going to post some renderings on our Instagram and all our socials. Lester has a nasty scar on his upper right arm. Think just below where a t-shirt sleeve might hit.
Okay.
And I'll post that on Instagram too. He was a talented painter, an artist. So he could still be doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
When he lived with Kay, he was still painting and drawing. In fact, she showed Unsolved Mysteries some of his work that he had done while he lived with her that he had left behind. I feel like that's a part of him that he can't hide. That's something that the only thing probably that he's good at.
Yeah.
So he's not going to stop doing that.
And so he would be about 73.
He would be about 73.
Okay.
Yeah, he'd be about in his 70s. He's got family in Florida, California, of course, Michigan and Ohio, Alabama, and possibly Texas. So he could be in any of those states or none of those states.
Yeah.
He could be under any amount of names.
He could be under a bridge.
He could be under a bridge, and I hope he is.
Troll.
Look at his picture. Do you know him? Did you know him a year ago when you were at a center for troubled youth or at a hospital and he was mopping the floors? Does he look familiar? The U.S. Marshal Service is offering $50,000, up from $25,000 just 2 years ago, for anyone who can provide information that leads to this monster's arrest. I've linked their website in the show notes. If you have any information, call 866-4-WANTED or go to unsolved.com.
I'll be on the lookout. Mm-hmm. I'm going to look at his picture. I'm going to study it.
We should get t-shirts made.
Ooh.
Have you seen me?
Mm-hmm.
New merch coming soon.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what to say.
It wasn't great.
I asked you to stop talking and you did not.
You asked me to stop talking like 30 minutes ago. Mary Ellen.
The
sweet angel. When you see her face, you're just going to fall over. Like, honestly, you're just going to fall over and collapse because she's the little girl that next door.
Yeah.
Like, she's that little girl that's going down the sidewalk giggling. Like, we all know her.
Yeah.
And she was just doing her chores.
Yeah. And her sweet family that...
Oh my God. Her sister Brenda, the one who was with her, who stayed behind at the laundromat with their clothes. Like, their sister Myrtle told Unsolved Mysteries that Brenda carried that till her own death. Just could not shake that.
No, I'm so sorry.
Like, she could have done something. Could I have done something different? What if I went with her? What if I went?
Yeah.
You know, just
I'm
all
sure,
these.
Yeah, survivor's guilt for sure. It's so awful. Like, these people, their lives are turned upside down, and he gets to go shopping. He gets to go painting houses. It's, well, that was stupid. Let's do it again sometime.
We will.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for listening to Cousins on Crime. Get connected with us by becoming a free member on our Patreon. Or for just $5 a month, you'll have access to bonus episodes, discussion groups, and much more. If you can't afford $5 a month, we get it. Inflation, am I right? Please consider leaving us a positive review and rating wherever you listen.
And don't forget merch. Support our podcast and show the love by sporting t-shirts with our latest designs, or grab an evidence bag to keep the chain of custody for all your valuables. Don't forget to follow our show on your favorite streaming app so you never miss an episode, and get photos and updates on our Instagram at Cousins on Crime Podcast or our Cousins on Crime Facebook page. Have a case suggestion? Email us at cousinsoncrime@gmail.com.